Hi boys and girls, and welcome along to another Waifs and Strays video. Waifs and Strays was a term used certainly over here from sort of around Victorian times, though it dates back a lot older. A waif and stray was an abandoned and neglected child usually, so quite apt that I'm using it for bits of abandoned and neglected test equipment. In this case it's Marconi TF2606 Differential DC Voltmeter. I don't know if it works yet, it came home with me yesterday. I'll show you why I haven't tried to plug it in or anything yet. But the important thing inside seems to be working, which I'll come to specifically when I make a video on this piece of gear. But suffice to say, I hold quite high hopes of this working again. So what is a differential voltmeter? Well, the experts amongst you will know, the not experts amongst you won't know. So instead of measuring voltage directly, this one actually compares the input with a standard reference inside. So it measures the difference. And it works in function rather like a bridge. So you turn your voltage using these switches here until your meter is nulled out there at 0. So these four knobs here are switches, and this one's a vernier at the end here, and your decimal place is signified by these lamps that light up here. Hopefully they'll light up. Quite interesting. I'll zoom in just for this bit a minute, because by the time YouTube processes this you might not see it. This bit is brilliant. Ready? So you turn the input settings or your voltage limit range you want to measure, and watch this here. Isn't that great? It moves. Look at that. That is a miracle. An engineering miracle. But anyway, so we'll get into this at some point. I was going to show you why I hadn't plugged it in yet. Now, as I say, this is from a capacitor inside. This one's dated to 1970. And this is a very nice quality mains cable. Someone had snipped it off at the plug, so it was flush. I peeled back some of this outer. I was going to put a new plug on it, and I don't know if you can see, but the insulation on the wires, you've got this black filling here. The insulation on the wires has crumbled. I've never seen that I can remember on a relatively modern mains lead. So it's a good job that I didn't plug it in or it didn't have a plug on it already and I just plugged it in. It's all crumbling, so it's still flexible. Would have been a very nice mains lead at one time. It's rubbery, but inside, I guess as I'm doing that, it's all crumbling. So clearly unsafe. Very unusual. The wire itself is like hair. It's very flexible. Would have been a great bit of cable at one time, I guess. Right, so next up, I'll put this down. Next up on the bench we have an AVO 7. This one came home with me a couple of weeks ago from a Radio Rally. I think it cost me £3 or something, I can't remember now. It was in a bit of a state, and one range wasn't working. That was the 10 volt range. The resistor that sort of the resistor on that range had gone open circuit, so I replaced that. I rewired it with a couple of resistors in series to get to 4.9k resistance, and it all came back to life, and it's working perfectly now. I used my AD584 voltage reference, and it's pretty much spot on, so it cleaned up really nicely. Now this is a 1951 model, 19 1954 this is. So, and it's unfortunately got a metal case on it. Now these are a pig to get off, absolute pig, and you mustn't ever just get a screwdriver and lever, because you can crack this Bakelite edge away here. There's a bit of a flange, I don't know if you can see it, and what you'd normally do, I guess, is get a screwdriver and it literally just cracks it off and snaps it. So you need something like a painter's palette knife, you know, the big spready things, spreaders, or wallpaper stripper or something, just to lever it off bit by bit. But yeah, very nice meter, as I say, accurate, and it's still got the rubber bungs in the power factor socket. And it was absolutely filthy, and all the paint had gone out of these engraved knobs here, so I've refilled it with paint, took a couple of goes, and then put some wax over the top so it hopefully stays in there. Very nice meter. It's only 1000 ohms per volt though, so not like the AVO Mark III there, which is 20,000 ohms per volt. And while we're on AVO meters, I got another one the same day as well, in much better condition originally. This one cost me £5. Very happy to pay the bloke I got it from, because he's a good chap. This one, later version, slightly deeper knobs, and this one was owned by the former British Airports Authority, and was last calibrated about 23 years ago. But again, check with my voltage reference and it's pretty much spot on. And then what else we got next? Next we have, this one came home with me yesterday as well. We have the Philips GM6000 valve voltmeter. Quite a dinky little unit, it's not that big at all. I think it's got an ECC 82 inside it, and inside it's also got an AC probe, and this is the bad bit. Ready? Someone's broken the end off the probe. Now the probe body, just looking at the drawing, should sit about this much longer, with obviously the metal pin spike proddy thing out the front, and there should be a capacitor inside it between here, this point here, and the metal spike. So I need to find something to go on the front there, and there's a valve inside there. So I've not tried this one, see no reason why it shouldn't work. The meter looks in good condition. Sorry, the movement. It's metal back, plastic trim around here. 220 volts it works from, so I might need to find some way of dropping it, because my voltage is about 240 here. I think you can calibrate it for voltage, and it's unfortunately quite important for a valve voltmeter to know what your voltage settings are. It's just the way they work. So yeah, we'll have a look at that one sometime soon. Next up we have another valve voltmeter. This one is the Marconi, let's move the camera a little bit because this is quite tall. This is the Marconi TF899 valve millivoltmeter from the mid-50s, I would say. Now this one's also got an AC probe that is usually tucked in here as the contacts here. There's a valve inside that, and I think this one's missing some knurled sort of nuts on the end, plastic covered nuts. I'm sure anyone is familiar. I can't find a picture with enough detail on the internet to show what was on here, but I assume they're just like plastic covered nuts, insulated nuts. And that that's a bit of a pig to get out. Now the interesting thing about this one, it only goes up to 2 volts. That's the maximum reading it'll go to. It's actually, you can use it because it's got a headphone jack here. You can use it as a signal tracer, or you can output that to an amplifier, and hence to some speakers. So yeah, you can use this as a signal tracer. Not sure if it works. Don't see why it shouldn't. I notice the valve still inside there, or one of the valves. Just see it through there. I don't think this has been plugged in for a very long time because it's got one of the old round pin plugs on it. This one made by GEC. So yeah, and the pins aren't scratched. Some people have socket sets on the sockets on the bench to take old plugs like this, but this one hasn't seen any action for years. Right, next on the bench we have a SABA Triberg G. This is a transistor set from the 1970s. SABA, one of the more famous manufacturers in the world for quality radios. This one's long wave, medium wave, short wave and FM, VHF. There is one problem with this which the seller was honest about. It's missing the dial pointer. Now this was delivered to me this morning by chucking it over my garden fence. Hopefully, or it looks as if it isn't damaged, but there's something rattling about inside which, oh look, there it is actually. I've just seen it. There's been something rattling about inside. You probably won't see this, but the dial pointer is just there. So that might just need re-gluing or something. Certainly I can see the tuning capacitor through here, and the tuning knob actually moves it, so the dial string's still connected up, which is a bonus. So should clean up alright. It's got about 3 watts power output from the speaker. It looks a quality radio, and I thought it would look quite nice. It's not particularly big. Yeah, very nice. So we'll get into that one. Probably this will be the next thing I work on because I quite like radios. I haven't done a radio in some weeks now. Next up we have, or last up, sorry, we have another AVO. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 9 AVOs just in this room now. Flipping ridiculous. So this one I paid £10 for. It's got a leather case, always a bonus, which needs some restitching. It's alright, I've got the gear to do that. Now this is an AVO 8 Mark V from the 1970s. Oops. Let's get that lid down. From the 1970s into the 80s, I believe. It's got 3 kilovolt maximum input up the top there. Now the reason why I wanted this one, other than the case, it's got 1.5 sets of leads with it, plus the prods, these long reach prods. It's got the normal prods with it, both sets, and it's got a full set of clips with it as well. So those leads alone would cost you more than 20 quid new, or even second hand on eBay. And it also came with the manual, so it's pretty much a complete set. Now the meter's reading a little low on the 10 volt range. I haven't tested it on anything else because my voltage reference only goes up to 10 volts. And it's reading slightly low on all ranges, on all voltage. So it's probably a resistor gone high. I think that's it. If it reads low, the resistor's gone high inside. So I'm going to have a look at that. There's one check you need to do, which is to make sure the movement's receiving the right amount of current, and that's a little bit complicated. You need to do like a 4-wire measurement. I've got the instructions how to do it. I've just never done it before. So I'd like to get this one working. If not, doesn't matter. I mean, it still works. It reads resistance perfectly. It could also be the contacts on the switching inside. That might also do it, because obviously if you've got resistance on these, you know, and your voltage is passing through the switch contacts, then it might harm the harm your voltage readings. Excuse me. So that's it. I think I am going to have a look at the SABA next. I've got a couple of other bits of test equipment in the back of the car. I bought two 1940s wobulators yesterday for aligning AM sets, which will be quite interesting. Very interesting, because a modern scope doesn't have enough drive to, you know, the ramp output from your scope probably doesn't have enough drive, so I'm going to have to get a vintage scope which you know, has pretty much 200 volts on your ramp output. That's what these wobulators need to drive them. So we'll have a look at those separately, because they're a little bit heavy and a little bit complicated. I've no idea where I'm going to put them actually, but that's another story. What else? And I've also bought I bought a Olsen, which are quite a well-known make over here. They make 19-inch rack power outlets, you know, like strip power outlets. My only power at the moment is down on the floor here. I've got like a 8-way trailing socket on the floor here. So every time I want to power those 2 meters up here, or even these Marconis, I need to put the trailing socket up and put it on the bench, so the mains lead can reach. The tech's fine, that goes down the side. I've got quite enough length on the lead to reach that. And I also bought a sweep function generator the other day. That's an exact, let's have a quick zoom in of that. I bought an exact what is it, 507. They look to do the same thing, but all sort of different. That one's actually quite fun to watch going. Actually, I can't find a manual for it. I cleaned the switches and it all works absolutely brilliantly now. It's just some idiot like the one behind the camera doesn't know how to use it. So I need to learn how to use that, and I'll get the wobulators out of the car at a later date, or as soon as the missus wants to go shopping and realises there's 2 large items of test equipment in the boot, and I'll make a video on those. Right, thanks for watching another Waifs and Strays video. More to come.